So one of the big issues is how do we square the circle between achieving commercial objectives on the one hand and doing the right thing on the other? It's become clear to most of us, at least, that the world is at an inflection point in terms of both the environmental and social issues that we're facing. And Kantar's global monitor data shows that people blame businesses and government for these issues and expect them to take responsibility. We're seeing people demonstrating levels of activism that we've not seen since the 60s. But it's not only the woman on Main Street saying this, it's also the woman on Wall Street. The CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest investor, has called for companies to balance making money with a contribution to society. A joint statement from the governors of the banks of France and England stated that if some companies and industries fail to adjust to this new world, they will simply fail to exist. And of course, we've seen in the Financial Times' new agenda a call for a reset of capitalism. So there's a palpable commercial risk, but it's also about opportunity. So Paul Polman, who we all know is the ex-CEO of Unilever, put it this way: sustainability isn't just the right thing to do, it is essential to drive business growth. And it's about $1 trillion of opportunity. So if you take a quick look at some of the numbers from Kantar's Who Cares Who Does study, well, the most sustainably engaged segment, what we call eco-actives, have some $382 billion of potential spending power in the FMCG sector alone. $1 in every 5 spent on FMCG products comes from eco-actives, who've grown in number from 16 to 20% of global shoppers since 2019. And since the pandemic began, they're focusing on more environmental initiatives. So in answer to this question, the data suggests that actually it's a false conundrum. We're talking here about commercial risk and commercial opportunity as much as about doing the right thing. And in fact, the moral case and the business case have come together. So looking at Kantar's Who Cares Who Does study, it seems to be actually older people who are taking sustainable actions, which is perhaps surprising to people. So we looked into why that is and what brands can do to encourage younger people to be more active. We know that one of the central challenges that businesses face from a consumer perspective is the so-called value action gap, the gap between people's personal values and their actions. And Kantar's foundational sustainability study in the UK identified that 92% of people say they want to live a sustainable life, but only 16% are actively changing their behaviours. And this is confirmed by decades of studies across the world and across categories. Now, the UN described closing this gap as the holy grail in overcoming barriers to sustainable consumption. And as I mentioned, our Who Cares Who Does research shows that the spending power of those most engaged with sustainable issues in FMCG alone is $382 billion. So closing this gap is both crucial to the transition to a sustainable consumer economy and offers huge commercial opportunity. And while there may be some overclaim or virtue signaling, what we observe is that people want help from brands to align their actions with their values and beliefs. And while shifts in policy and industry transformation can take decades to realize, behavioral change can take hold faster, as we've seen in the COVID pandemic. We see some very concrete barriers and frictions for younger people. For example, many of the actions to reduce plastic involve some planning and organisation, whereas the data tells us that younger people tend to impulse buy, shop for tonight or buy takeaways or get lunch out of home. So brands and retailers can target these occasions and help young people make more sustainable choices and help them resolve the friction between the values they hold and the actions they end up taking. So the obvious question that many companies ask us is, well, what about the impact of COVID on consumers and companies with regard to purpose and ethics? So early on in the pandemic, we at Kantar argued that the D word that mattered was disruption more than disease. And Kantar data from around the world confirms this. It's the impact on daily life, not the worry about falling sick, that is how people are experiencing this crisis. And in a way, we should take comfort from this because however crazy things seem right now, we can apply learnings from past disruptions. And the key point to remember is that disruptions clear the way for trends that were already gaining pace, which emerge as the next wave of disruptive opportunity. So the smart question to ask is, what's been slowly taking hold that's ripe for acceleration? And the answer to that is pretty clear. It's the shift from person to public, from people demanding that brands deliver not just a better self, but a better society too. It's what we call the era of the public. It's about sustainable transformation. And we see this in our data. BrandZ, the world's largest brand equity database, contains data on tens of thousands of brands gathered from interviews with over 150,000 people every year around the world. What we see is that since 2016, there's been a significant uptick in the value consumers placed on companies' commitments to issues relating to purpose and sustainability. Now, if we look at data from our global COVID barometer that's been running over the past several months, what we see is that worldwide, 73% of people believe environmental issues are as important or more so since the pandemic hit. Remarkably, in China and Nigeria, that number rises to 87 and 84% respectively. And this is what the Unilever CEO, Alan Jope, had to say about it. He said, we're all very focused on the virus right now, as we should be. But the other big problems in the world, things like climate change and inequality, they're not going away. Our COVID-19 barometer shows that people want brands to demonstrate leadership. And in our Who Cares, Who Does study, 37% of people see manufacturers as the most important stakeholder to limit environmental damage. People want corporations and brands to step up.